everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Today I want to talk about a book by Philip Fracassi called Boys in the Valley. I want to do a bit of a book review, and I always have a hard time with book reviews. How much do you give? How much do you hide? And it's hard for me because so many times I read a book review or I watch a video from a book review and they don't tell me anything. I don't know anything about this book. I don't know if I'm going to like it, if I want to read it. They'll tell me cool words that are spread across all sorts of reviews, like coming of age and things like that. And man, if you put all of the books that were called coming of age in a pot, you would find 1,000 different kinds of stories. So I have trouble with those types of descriptives. But anyway, I want to talk about this book because I really, really liked it. Not only did I like the book, but the author is flippin' phenomenal, if I could coin a phrase. Anyway, the book, Boys in the Valley, was the first time I heard of the author Philip Fracassi. Earthling Publications did a Halloween special limited edition. They've got a series, and this was the 16th book in that series, and it was Boys in the Valley, and the price was cheap. I think it was maybe 50 bucks. Limited edition, limited to maybe 500 signed, numbered copies. And I'd heard from a guy named Jeff Terry who said that he had an advanced review copy and that this book was really good and he strongly recommended it. So I jumped on it and I bought it, and I did not regret it. Not only is the book phenomenal, fabulous, but this book right here is worth a whole lot more money than I paid for it, and I'd have never even considered buying it if it wasn't for old Jeff Terry. So thanks, Jeff. Anyway, from there, 19th edition made these cool aftermarket slipcases for Boys in the Valley, and this Boys in the Valley limited edition had Glenn Chadbourne artwork on the front, and it looks just great. I'm truly happy to have it in my collection. I'm truly happy that I bought it at list price and I'm not paying those eBay prices, because they go for a lot more than that. I've seen them 500-ish or more at times. And then from Nightfire, there's the trade edition coming out in July of 2023. And they were nice enough to send me this advanced review copy for the trade hardcover edition, although it's a softcover copy, and it's got artwork by Jonathan Bartlett on the front, and man, it looks good. I can't wait until they publish this. I want to get a hardcover copy for the collection. But to talk a little bit about this book, it is a book that people will say coming of age, because it's about kids and teenagers and them going through a very difficult experience. And I think about things that I want to compare it to, and it's very tough again, because you have some of the stuff, people compare Stephen King to practically every author that writes anything anywhere near horror nowadays. But I'd say this is a book that does make you think about Stephen King in the 80s. It also reminds me a little bit of The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, which is one of my favorite novels because of, I guess because of the, perhaps, we assume, a demon possession type of a scenario and how it affects people and causes them to do things and stuff like that. But reading this book, it is excellent. I give it flat out 5 stars out of 5 stars. And it's worth reading again, because I read it again. When they sent me this advanced review copy, it was probably 2 or 3 years after I read my limited edition book, and I hate reading limited edition books. I'm just that way. I don't like handling books that might be worth money, perhaps messing them up. But I did, and I got this arc, and I took good care of it because I like arcs, and it's really cool that I was able to get one. But I read it again, and just great. Reading it a second time. It's not a hard read. So it's not like I'm missing things and missing clues, but I remembered some things about it that I had long since forgotten about, some aspects of characters and some little things that happen in conversations between folks, and maybe stuff that I passed over early, read through it not realizing this mattered, and then the second time reading through it's like, oh, I forgot that was in there right off the bat early in the book. But very simply, for description, the book starts off, you have the main character is a kid named Peter Barlow. And I think he was 9 at the very beginning of the book, 9 years old. And he's a poor kid. His dad's out hunting for food, trying to put food away for the winter. He comes home drunk and he's got nothing. And his mom, Peter's mother, is giving the dad a hard time about coming home drunk, about not being able to feed the family, we're going to starve, and all that kind of stuff. And the dad, they get into it, and the dad goes off and kills her, shoots her right in the head with their son watching, sneaking from, peeking out through his door, watching. And then he turns and sets the place on fire, looks his son right in the eyes, and shoots himself in the head. And that's how the story starts for Peter. And then the book jumps ahead. It jumps ahead now. Peter is at St. Vincent's Orphanage, which is out kind of in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. It's coming into winter. They're on the verge of what they're expecting to be a very harsh winter. And now Peter, I think he's 16 or 17. He's almost an adult. He and another orphan named David are the two oldest kids in this orphanage. And Peter he's being groomed to become a priest. And there's one of the priests in the orphanage is named Father Andrew, and he's the good guy. He's the priest that cares for the children, that wants good things for the children, tries to protect them. And Father Andrew is grooming Peter to become a priest, and he's hoping that he will choose that life and choose it the right way, knowing what he's getting into and knowing what he's given up in civilian life, or in the regular life, the worldly life. And he's hoping that he would get commissioned again at St. Vincent's Orphanage, because he's so good and spends so much time and effort at trying to teach children, help children get along, stay out of trouble, protecting them from the bullies and stuff like that, and also protecting them from the headmaster, who's a real son of a gun, and that's Father Poole. Father Poole is the boss. He's the headmaster there, and he's cruel to the children. He comes off as very egomaniacal in ways. He cares about his authority and people respecting his authority and all that kind of stuff, being subservient to him. And anything that might call that authority into question, he's got to squash it. And he can be very cruel to the children, physically cruel, emotionally cruel, and stuff like that. There's also another priest there, Father White, and he's an older guy who kind of just goes along. He don't seem to make waves. He does what he's told, goes along, goes with the flow, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a guy, Brother Johnson, a big guy, and he's not a priest. And early in the book, he, thinking to himself, hints that he's been done very awful things to women, to children, and to things like that. And he's kind of Father Poole's henchman. He's the one that does the dirty work. He's the one that, when the kids need to be severely punished, he's the one that helps take them out. He came up with an idea for a hole, like in prison. Somebody gets in trouble, you send them to the hole. Well, they created this hole. It was his idea, and Father Poole loved it as a way to punish the kids, to teach them to do what they're told and all that kind of stuff. When they get bad, they go put them in the hole overnight, freezing cold, snowy, who cares? And if they don't go willingly, you shove them in this 8-foot hole, and if they die, well, they should have done what they were told. That's kind of the attitude. But Peter tries to protect the kids. He tries to keep them out of trouble, tries to keep them from being bullied or from bullying others, tries to teach them to be good so they can survive St. Vincent's Orphanage. And this is early 20th century. This is the early, like 1905, I think. He went. The story takes place in 1905. So his father killed his mother and himself in 1898. Fast forward to 1905, they're at St. Vincent's Orphanage, getting ready for this harsh winter. So there's quite a few younger children, and Peter tries to take care of them. David is his peer. He's the same age, almost the same age, within a couple of months, I think. And they haven't been enemies, but they've never been on the same side. It's kind of David is worried about David. He's not buying into this whole father, priest, Catholicism, any of this kind of stuff. He wants to get out of St. Vincent's, and he's just waiting for his chance to get as far away from there as he possibly can. He doesn't want anybody looking to him for guidance or protection or advice or any of that kind of stuff. He'd taken a bunch of beatings from Father Poole growing up, and he learned his lessons, but he also learned that he wasn't going to comply up here. He might follow the rules, but to stay out of trouble. But he's not buying into any of this stuff, where Peter has. And Peter's at a point where he's trying to decide. See, every now and then, Father Andrew will take him to a local farmer where they'll get goods that they'll need to last them for a few months. They'll go to this farmer and they'll get goods. Well, the farmer's got a daughter named Grace Hill. And when Peter's young, when he first started going there with Father Andrew, he and Grace fell for each other. And so she would send secular books back to the orphanage with him, with a note included. And every time they'd go, he'd bring the book back with a note that he wrote. And then she'd send a new book. And so for years and years, they corresponded like this. And Father Andrew is starting to realize that maybe Peter's going to choose love of a woman over the priesthood. And he's kind of worried about that. At the end of the day, though, he knows that for Andrew to make a good priest, he's going to have to choose. He's going to have to make the choice for himself, not be pushed into it. And Andrew kind of is on the fence. He really does want to be a priest, but he also really does love Grace Hill, and he doesn't want to give that. He can't just say no to that at this point. Well, one night, there's a banging on the door. All the kids are in their dorm, supposed to be sleeping. It's lights out. Not allowed to talk or any of that kind of stuff, or bad things are going to happen. Well, there's a banging at the door. They hear they hear the noise, and they come in, and it turns out the sheriff and some of his deputies had just gone hunting for a 2 or 3 year old kid that had been abducted. They went out on the trail. This is 1905, so they got them, their deputies, and they're after on the trail of these people that abducted this little girl. They found the girl. I think it was a girl. They found this kid, 3-year-old kid. They found this kid brutally cut to pieces. They were doing ritualistic sacrifice sort of thing with the kid. So they pretty much killed everybody except for one person, who turns out was the sheriff's brother. The sheriff shot him square in the chest, and he didn't die. So he's tied up. They got a bag over his head, and they're headed towards town, but the orphanage is on the way. And in a way, the sheriff wants the priests to try to save his brother physically, but they want the priest to try to do something for his brother up here, for his eternal soul, because they think he might be possessed by a demon, and there's hints to that. Meanwhile, while that's going on, Peter had kind of opened the door and was watching. And he got caught, and they got put to bed and all that kind of stuff. Then they hear a gun blast, boom, they hear a gun blast. The sheriff kills his brother. The brother goes nuts, does some bad things, kills a deputy, and the sheriff shoots his brother in the head. And the moment he shoots his brother in the head, boom. And in that moment, suddenly the doors in the dormitory blow open, and a cross falls, big old cross falls off the wall. And Peter looks, and there's nobody there. Suddenly, they start noticing behavioral changes in some of the kids, secretly grouping up together, whispering, conspiratorial stuff going on. And then that's when the killing starts. And I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there because that's when the story really starts to happen. That's the bulk of the story is still remaining, and I don't want to go any farther, but not only does Philip Fracassi give you some characters that you can really love, but he gives you some characters that you can really hate. And I think in a good book, you need that kind of stuff. You need to have good guys and bad guys, and you need to have people that you really love and people that you really hate. You want to see the people that you really love overcome, and the people that you really hate either get fixed or get dealt with or be beaten or defeated, or however that works in the story that we're talking about. But this book really does that, and you care about these characters, and to me, that's what I need. I need to care about the people in the book. Great stories are great. I need to care about characters, and he does that well. Not only do I care about a character, but I care about a handful of characters, and that's what he's done. So Peter, I care about this kid, young adult. David, I learned to care about him. Father Andrew, and you got some of the younger ones that you really care about, and that's what Philip's done here. So, Boys in the Valley, this would be his first really truly published novel. I don't know how you figure out published novels, what's first and all that stuff. He had some books that were out there, but this one was published by a limited edition publisher, Earthling Publications. So I kind of say it's the first, but it's going to be published in mass market pretty much as his third novel. And that's where it gets kind of funky. See, Boys in the Valley was published in a trade hardcover edition. Gothic had already been published in a limited edition, so had Boys in the Valley. But then later, Gothic was published in a trade hardcover, and then now Boys in the Valley is going to be published in a trade hardcover. So all that becomes a little bit confusing, but there's 3 Philip Fracassi novels that I think you must read, and that is Boys in the Valley. That is one called Gothic. Here's an example of the Gothic trade edition hardcover. I showed it in a video relatively recently. It looks cool. Keelan Patrick Burke artwork on the front. That one comes from Cemetery Dance. And then the other one, which it puts me in a conundrum, if you will. This book makes it hard for me because for a while now, for years, I would easily say I love Boys in the Valley, and I didn't expect that there would be anything to beat it. But when I read A Child Alone with Strangers, and I did a review on this one as well, look it up on the channel if you're interested. I don't know. It's kind of like 1A and 1B. It's hard to say. But that being said, you got to read them all. Gothic, Boys in the Valley, and A Child Alone with Strangers. They're all different books. Now, both of these have kids in them. This one essentially a kid, and this one is a group of kids, where Gothic doesn't. It's a completely different kind of book, and these are completely different kinds of books. But right off the bat, within the first few pages, you're going to find Philip Fracassi is a true pro in terms of being a writer. I've read lots of books from lots of people, and when I jump into a Philip Fracassi book, right away, I know this guy's special. He's a pro. But go out there and get your Boys in the Valley. If you like books like The Exorcist, this is in the same ballpark. It ain't the same thing, but it's kind of in the same ballpark. Plus, you got teenagers, you got younger kids, you got some of that kind of stuff, and I really dig that genre as well. There are so many books that involve kids in those age groups that I really truly like, and this one gives you some of that stuff. Kids overcoming, dealing with the hard parts of life, and trying to make the best of it. And then the horror starts. Anyway, that's all the lies I can think of to say at the moment. I got no more lies to tell. Thank you for your time. I do truly appreciate it. C'est la vie, baby. Doo-doo.